Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al Dorsey, Director of the Men's Center here at Lone Star College-Kingwood. I want to welcome you to our program today. It's called Overcoming Obstacles and also kind of forward slash growing up without a dad. But this program today is one we did before, and actually Professor Reyes came in and talked with us when he did it in the Men's Center a few years back, and we have him here today with us as well. So we just want to thank you for being here. I'll tell you a little bit about him. I've been knowing him for 7 years because I've been at Lone Star College-Kingwood 7 years, but he was at Lone Star College-Kingwood before Sci-Fair for many, many years, and he'll tell you the exact number. But he's always been a good friend. He's always been a person who you can go to and talk to about anything. He's always willing to help and lend a hand. He's also helped me with the summer program called AIM and Him with the African American Institute for Males and Hispanic Institute for Males as one of our mentors and teachers. And I know he will love to do it again with us. We won't do it this year because of the pandemic and COVID and everything, but we'll hope to be back on track for 2022. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you Professor Raul Reyes, Professor of History at Sci-Fair, Lone Star Sci-Fair.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. And as I mentioned to you before, that there's very few people in this life that you can actually call a class act. And I certainly appreciate your remarks relative to my almost 16-year tenure at Lone Star College, Kingwood. But overall, I've been with the system for over 20 years. I started at Lone Star College, Montgomery. In fact, I started with a system before it was even called Lone Star. It was called, I think it was called North Harris Montgomery Community College System. And each college had like separate different names. It wasn't uniformed as it is now. But in terms of the actual presentation that Mr. Dorsey mentioned, I started thinking about what I had talked about the last time, and I wanted to basically focus on my path to professorship, because oftentimes as students, and we were all students at one point, oftentimes as students, we seem to be under this false illusion or impression that we have a very charmed life, and that that the position that we have reached has been basically without fetters or without fetters at all. But the fact of the matter is that all of us have our own challenges that we've overcome. But I think it's important for students and for others to realize that, you know, whatever it is that we have attained has not been handed to us on a silver platter. So in my particular case, and I wrote down some notes earlier this morning, is that first and foremost, becoming a professor was, I think if you ask my high school teachers, they probably would be turning over in their grave thinking that this kid that graduated at the bottom half of, what is it, almost a senior class of about 600 would end up becoming a professor. And sometimes I'm still surprised that I'm a professor, and this is after 20 years. I can tell you right now that part of the challenges that I had to overcome was this belief that I wasn't smart enough, that I was not college material. I returned to college as a non-traditional student, more so to silence my wife, not necessarily because I felt that it was within me. My wife and I have been married for over 40 years, and I can tell you that the biggest arguments we ever had, they were not anything like knockdown, drag-out events, but the biggest arguments we ever had were basic arguments over this fight that she wanted me back to college. And I kept telling her, don't you understand that I am not college material? I'm just not. And the reason that I say that is that you have to remember that when I was growing up, the discrimination in the public school was just very evident. It was just very evident. the discrimination was such for people of color that just like the Supreme Court revealed in Brown versus Board of Education, attending a segregated school does instill in a person of color this inferiority complex. And it's an inferiority complex that extends well beyond our public school years. And unfortunately, this inferiority complex that the public schools hammered into my head about, how because I was Mexican, because Mexican history was not important, all these things factored into this belief that I was not college material. Never mind the fact that way back when there was this mindset that if you were horrible at math, you were a pendejo. I mean, you were you just were a brainless idiot, because back then math was deified. And it's not until I returned to college and I started taking college courses that I realized that there are different levels of intelligence. It's not simply just based on math. So it is within that context that because I was between a rock and a hard place, that I returned to college. I was able to complete as a non-traditional student an associate's degree. And please do not get me wrong, an associate's degree is probably the hardest degree I earned of the 3 degrees I've earned, precisely because I had to take this buffet of courses that I didn't necessarily like, but they had to be knocked out. So I was able to complete an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and a master's degree within 6 years. And without sounding self-absorbed, please understand that I could not have done this work if I had not surrounded myself with people who supported me through thick and thin, and especially my wife. If it was my wife who first recognized the intelligence when I didn't even realize it, and I can tell you right now that my wife deserves sainthood, because during the time that I was in school, there were plenty of people telling her, why are you putting this guy through school, especially with us Latinos, that the mentality is that Latino husbands are supposed to provide, not be provided for. So I know we had, at least within my family and hers, people critiquing and second guessing her choice to put me through school. And then worst of all, planting seeds in her head that me earning these degrees was basically a path towards divorce, that I was going to leave her to find another woman. Like, what was she thinking? And yet she was able to basically deflect all this criticism and just continue to support me. And for that, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, really, I can tell you that I'm forever grateful. And that would be one piece of advice that I would give anyone. You need to surround yourselves with people who actually care for you. And those are very few and far between, but when you do surround yourself with people who care for you, believe me, the sky's the limit, and you'll end up surprising yourself, just like I've surprised myself. I can tell you right now that without her support, I was able to complete my master's degree. And I remember that when I was at El Paso Community College, I began to have aspirations as to what exactly I wanted to do with my academic career. I didn't really decide on becoming on history becoming my discipline until well into my junior year, and I'm not recommending that. I was actually between English major and history major. But the funny thing is, I decided on a history major degree because I just hated English professors critiquing my writing. And I said, you know what? I don't need this crap. I know I can write. And if I'm going to be critiqued, at least it's not going to be filled with red ink like English professors tend to do. What is interesting, and I remember having this conversation with my good friend, Dr. Darren Quincy Rankin, who is obviously moved on to bigger and better things. I remember talking about that famous phrase that he always used to use of dream disablers. Some of the things that you guys are going to run into, sadly, is what he called dream disablers. And I had a circumstance way back when I was at the community college, that I had this brilliant psychology professor, one of the few Latino professors that I had the fortune of interacting with. And I figured him, of all people, as a fellow Latino, would understand my aspirations, my goals, in desiring to dream about this becoming a professor. But lo and behold, and like I said, this came out of left field. I remember approaching him one time prior to class and basically opening up my heart and sharing with him my dream and desire to become a college professor. And his reaction was definitely less than expected, in that he practically yelled at me and he said, "Don't dream about it. It'll never happen. You're delusional." Something along those lines. You know, a weaker person would have taken that to heart and said, well, maybe this dude is right. But the fact of the matter is that my faith in myself, and the fact that he pissed me off were three driving forces that said, you know what, you can have your opinion, but let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens. So within that context, so I ended up graduating. I have I'm very reluctant to talk about my GPA, but I ended up graduating with honors in both my bachelor's and master's degree. In fact, I was the graduate school banner bearer because of my grades. Perhaps you guys cannot identify with this, but I'll share it anyway. When I was in I think I was maybe 2 weeks into my graduate program when my son passed away. He drowned on July 4th, 1995. And the fact of the matter is, really, I should have just quit right then and there. But by the grace of God, I just continued. You know, I put my head down and I threw myself into my work. Because the reality was, I had come so far that really it wasn't going to help anyone if I crawled up into a ball and just grieved for my son, you know, and I just didn't do it. So I ended up graduating with my master's degree. But the fact of the matter is, I was under this false illusion that given my academic track record, all the awards that I had received, I had already become published writer, that applying for a professorship would just be an easy transition. Well, the fact of the matter is that I was an adjunct professor at El Paso Community College for about 3 years. And for 3 years, the only thing I had to show for all my hard work and effort, and I still have them, by the way, about 100 rejection letters. About 100 rejection letters from community colleges all over the United States. Now, again, maybe I thank my wife for being so patient and supportive, but a lesser man would have said, you know what, I need to feed my family. I can't be supporting them on adjunct pay. I can't be living off of, you know, with no medical coverage. So those 3 years were challenging. But lo and behold, when I was about to throw in the towel, within the span of 3 months, I actually had 3 interviews at 3 different colleges. And one of them was at Lone Star College, Montgomery. One of them was at Lone Star College, Montgomery. So I interviewed there. I finally realized my dream of becoming a full-time professor. But the fact of the matter is that when you are the first one in your family to go to college, when you are among the few, in my particular case, the few Latinos as faculty members, you come to realize that just because you just finally got to your goal, that the path is not set for you. Because I can tell you that when I was hired at Lone Star College, Montgomery, within, I think, a year and a half, my colleagues, in terms of discrimination, ganged up on me and basically worked really hard to get me fired. I mean, super hard to get me fired. Again, I'm going to attribute that to the fact that because they hired me, I was under the impression, I've come to the realization that because I was the first Spanish surname history professor hired by the entire college system, that came with certain responsibilities and certain levels of discrimination. Because I was under the impression, I mean, at least it's been my experience way back when, that the committee that hired me was under some false illusion that because I was who I was, I would be so grateful that I would be listening strictly to them, that I wouldn't forge my own path. And that caused a rift between me and the department, never mind and I would say that it was partially racially motivated. So long story short, I came close to getting fired. And luckily for me, and by the grace of God, the American Federation of Teachers, Alan Hall, and Steve Head, who was the interim president of Lone Star College Montgomery, stepped in. And instead of getting fired, they simply transferred me to 2 different institutions, Lone Star College-Kingwood and Lone Star College North Harris. And what ended up happening to me is that I ended up basically in limbo, where typically before you receive a permanent contract, it typically takes 2 years to receive a permanent contract as a full-time faculty member. But with me, because of my special circumstances, I had to go through it twice. So basically, I had to go 4 years with not fully knowing if I was going to get that full-time contract. But luckily enough for me, in spite of the fact that I had a dean that was not sensitive to diversity, I persisted. I just persisted and persisted. And by the grace of God, I've been with the system for over 20 years, I am still around. So it hasn't, I mean, I could share more because I know oftentimes when you are a person of color and you're about to break that color line, that it comes with certain challenges. But the fact of the matter is, I've always been a firm believer that, and I've told this to Dr. Rankin, I've always been a firm believer that too much is given, much is expected. And I've always been a firm believer that because I have this platform, it is my responsibility as a person of color, it is my responsibility to help others self-actualize. Just like I had the support of my wife and countless other people. I think about all the people that helped me along the way, and I can tell you that the one constant thread were the women in my life. I mean, that was the one constant thread. And the fact that I never lost faith, and the fact that I always try to quote Gandhi: focus on the effort, don't worry about the result, and everything else tends to take care of itself. But in many ways, like I said, once you guys get your degree, understand that it's not just about you, it's about your community. Okay, I'm not laying some BS on you guys. One thing that I did forget to mention is that I grew up in a fairly impoverished neighborhood. I grew up without a dad, but in a way that was a blessing for me in that I had my grandparents, my mom, be the supporting cast in terms of any success that I achieved. So I'm a very blessed man. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I mean, but that's pretty much in a nutshell my presentation.
Okay, if you do have questions, you can unmute and ask questions. Also, you can put them in the chat box down there and I'll read those questions off. I'll start off with a question, Professor. Again, thank you for sharing again. And I know some of that story. I found out every time I hear part of it, I hear more. So I appreciate that. But I've always heard the support of your wife. I've always heard connecting with other people like Dr. Rankin and people that are moving forward. So I really like that. One of the things I guess I want to ask is, how do you feel you not having a dad, and how do you feel you're doing as a dad, in the sense of, are you giving your kids everything that you think you should have gotten? You know what I mean? Like without that model or that that format to show you, and how do you feel that you're doing in that sense, knowing that you didn't have it?
Well, I can tell you this, Al, that with my son, I have plenty of regrets, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I mean, he died at 12, and I wish I could have done certain things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that said, even the same goes for my marriage. I was determined consciously and subconsciously to forge a different path for the Reyes family. As a historian, I have a very strong belief when it comes to legacy. We represent we represent the people that we come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a high level of esteem for my grandparents and my mom because I still have my mom with me. But the fact of the matter is that I've tried to distance myself from the absence of that from that dad figure. Now I can tell you right now that it's not until now as an old man, and I'm 63. I don't typically like to admit that. Now as an old man, I found myself missing that father figure. I mean, someone who because I've met other individuals that would be that person's age, and I'm not gonna even call him a dad because a dad, you earn that title. You don't just throw it, plaster it on somebody. And I've run across men that were more or less approximately the age of that individual, and they are remarkable human beings. And I'm saddened by the fact that I didn't have someone like that, but by the same token, I am determined to be the best person that I can be, especially inclusive of my role as a father. While I miss my son, I often see young people, especially those that think I have something to say, that if they want to hear any fatherly advice, I mean, I'll be more than happy to share it with them. And that I think my big belief has always been, just like my grandfather, you have to model behavior. You can't just pay lip service about how one should behave or how one should act. You have to both talk the talk and walk the walk.
Okay. All right. Also, I was thinking, you mentioned some of the obstacles motivated you. So, are obstacles necessary to be successful?
I'm sorry, Alan, here.
You said that some of the obstacles are people that were blocking you. It motivated you to want to do more. So I'm saying, are obstacles necessary also to be successful?
I think to some extent, although it brings heartache, I really do believe that it is those very obstacles that will basically make you a better person. make you a better person, and it will toughen you up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you can do one of two things: you can run from it, or you can face it head on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no two ways about it. And I think one of the things that I've come to appreciate in my role as a professor and given the platform that I have is that, I mean, I say a lot of things in my lectures, but I think more than anything else, it is important that whatever I communicate to my students, I think it's important that they realize that the good things in life do not come easy. You know, that's inclusive of obstacles. And at the end of the day, you know, it's like those pieces of metal that are forged in fire. After you forge them in fire, they'll be so strong and so durable that you'll be a better person for it. I mean, is it pleasant? Is it fun? No, it's not. But the fact of the matter is, as I tell my daughter, I mean, those are the very things that at the end of the day, you'll say, well, you know, that in a way that was a blessing in disguise.
Okay. Yeah, I remember my dad used to say the same thing in the sense of, you know, anything worth having is not going to be easy, but you're going to appreciate it working for it. So I
Definitely.
still remember those words for sure. How do you break I guess, the cycle of wanting to give up when it gets hard? How do you break that cycle? What do you recommend in the sense of wanting? You say you almost threw in the towel a couple of times, but what motivated you to break that cycle of just throwing in the towel and giving up?
Well, I think one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to have in my life is strong women, starting with my grandmother and all the women that helped me get this far. I've always been sensitive to individuals who are looking out for me. But one thing I've noticed after all these years is that I've been blessed to have a supportive cast, especially the common thread I've seen is women with strong character. And I think the one that really deserves the most credit is my wife. I mean, honestly, the moment that I met her, and it wasn't a history class, by the way. I didn't do very good. I wasn't paying attention. The moment that I met her, I mean, she changed. My life began the moment I met her. She is such a tremendous. I mean, she is definitely my better half. But I think one of the things that I'd like to add, two other things that I'd like to add, is the faith that was instilled by my mom, my faith, and the other thing is that, and I got this compliment from the chancellor, Steve Head, when I was awarded the 20-year service award, and he said, "Raul, you are a testament to perseverance." I'll never forget those words. So I would say that that perseverance has always been part of my character traits. I remember reading many years ago the autobiography of Archie Griffin, the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner. And back then I used to read a lot of books, but it was mainly sports biographies. But because I didn't consider sports biographies academic, you know, I didn't really pay that much attention, and I was already reading, right? But my takeaway about that book, and I always like to think about it now throughout my life, is when I think he was asked this question about how he was successful, he said 3 Ds: desire, determination, and dedication. To me, that's a winning combination. Never mind the fact that I have these strong religious beliefs that like I tell my daughter when she's not being successful and she starts to doubt herself, just remember what Gandhi said: focus on the effort, don't worry about the result. And I think those are things that have helped me forge ahead.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you for your honesty and your answers. I do have one question here. Pierre Flood, let's see. Hold on a second. How do you get over the fear of taking on too much?
Well, when it comes we're all, in a way, fear is a good thing. In a way, fear is a good thing. And I'm a firm believer that I would rather try and fail than not try at all. Because if at all anything, as you get older, you start realizing, shit, I should have done that. You know? And now, and as with the passage of time, it's one of those things that you want to live life with as little regret as possible. Like I said, fear can be channeled in one of two ways. You can let it cripple you, or you can let it push you. And even though you fail, if at all anything, you had the courage to forge ahead. And if at all anything, people can live with that. People can live with that. I mean, I think one of the things that I always tell my daughter is that you got to take calculated, underscore the word, calculated risks in life. Consult with older people, consult with confidants, but don't let fear hold you back. I mean, that's what I would say. Don't let fear hold you back. Make an informed decision. Talk to people who have been around. But in life, it's all about taking calculated risks. But you'll be better for it, as opposed to like a lot of people who just sit on the sidelines and they hit 70, 65 years of age and they say, oh, I should have done that. I'm a firm believer that, you go big or you go home, as they say. You go big or you go home.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? Any other questions? You can write them in the chat box, or you can actually unmute and ask questions. Anybody? Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, I want to first of all thank you for being here, students as well as our staff. Again, the Men's Center is here and available as a resource to all of our students, faculty, and staff. I want to thank you, Professor Reyes, for doing a great job of actually sharing your testimony and sharing a part of you with us to help our students grow and help our faculty and staff as well. I want to make a few announcements as far as upcoming programs. I know we're getting ready for spring break, but on next week, we're going to have a program by one of my good friends from State Farm. His name is Noah Laveau, and he's going to be talking to us about understanding loss. And he's talking about loss due to like what just happened with this Arctic freeze that we got, loss from loss of property, loss from interruptions in income. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity. We always try to do something on finance and how to manage your money and things like that. So stay tuned. That's going to be next week. Going to be March 10th, next Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30. And then thereafter, I heard you talk about fear a little bit based on the question that was asked. We're going to have one called Overcoming Fear, and that's going to be in a few weeks too, toward the end of March. We also have March Madness. Typically, we'll do the March Madness in the man cave on campus. But this year, we're going to just do the brackets. So on March 22nd, be ready to come with your Final Four teams as well as your champion. Of course, we always give good gifts. So be around for that as well. So we have a few things coming up in the month of March, but stay tuned, stay connected, and definitely continue to tell your friends that we're going to have these virtual programs until we actually get back onto campus into our normal setting. So continue to be here with us. And if you have questions or need anything, definitely get in touch with me. And you can also look for our social media pages for the next upcoming events. And we also send out an email blast through the campus media relations as well as through Student Life. So Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you also, Professor Reyes, once again. We'll stay
No
in
problem.
touch and enjoy your sabbatical. All right.
Okay. Take care,
All right.
guys.
Have a good
Nice
afternoon,
meeting you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Be sure to follow us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Like this video, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button to be notified about our latest content.